Lou Lamoriello did it. He added a 30-goal scorer. This one a free agent from the KHL. We'll talk about that and a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We have got a lot to discuss on today's show, including a new signing by the Islanders of a 30-goal scorer. But first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all off-season long, including hirings, firings, trade rumors, free agency, the draft, and anything else that's going on with the New York Islanders. And it's always great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Big news on the island, a little surprise, but the Islanders announced on Thursday the signing of free agent forward Maxim Tsyplakov. He was basically playing in the KHL, and he had some pretty impressive numbers in the KHL. He's 25 years old, will turn 26 in September. So during probably the very beginning of training camp, give or take a couple of days, spent the last 7 seasons playing for Moscow Spartak of the KHL and really had a breakout season this year. He stands 6'2", 6'3", something in that range, depending on which source you look at. Weighs about 190 pounds. Played in 65 games for Moscow Spartak this past season and had a career high 31 goals, 16 assists, and 47 points. All 3 of those numbers, in fact, 4 if you count the games played, were career highs. Added 37 penalty minutes and was a plus 12 this year in 11 playoff games. He added 2 goals and 4 points to go with 6 penalty minutes. And basically, he had 6 power play goals last year, 4 shorthanded goals, so he can also kill penalties, and ranked 3rd in the KHL among forwards with 145 hits. So again, not the kind of guy who is going to shy away necessarily from contact. Now, there is a little bit of a catch in that he really was a 1-year, I'm not going to say a 1-year wonder, but his season this year was by far his best. I mean, in his entire KHL career, he scored 63 goals. This year, he scored 31 of them. So almost half his career goals all came this season. It was by far a breakout season. Prior to this past year, his career high in goals was 10, and his career high in points was 25. So he more than tripled the goal total and almost doubled the point total. And again, the last 2 seasons have by far been his best, but this last year, 2023, 2024, by far his best year, like not even close as far as that. It is a 1-year, entry-level contract. That much we do know. We do not know, at least officially, if it's a one-way or two-way contract as of this moment. And the terms have not yet been disclosed, and certainly the Islanders will not disclose them. It's just a question of whether or not he ends up being, having that information leaked through his agent at some point. Now, Tsyplakov was one of the more coveted free agents available as far as players who were not in the NHL. There were approximately 12 teams, according to one source, who were looking at Tsyplakov, and rumors basically saying that the Canadiens would be interested in signing him, but he ended up joining the Islanders instead. His physicality and his shot are his best assets. He is more or less a power forward, and he likes to get down into the dirty areas to do basically, his biggest damage. Now, his shot is good enough that he can score from, further away from the goal, but the dirty areas down low, in close, that is probably his best spot to score from. His biggest drawback, according to scouts, is that he is not a great skater. He lacks the speed that would make him an elite NHL player. That will probably keep him off the top line, that lack of speed, unless, you go back to the way Anders Lee a few years back used to play on the first line, where he may not be able to keep up with Matthew Barzal, but he can play a role on that line by creating traffic in front of the net, screening the goalie, getting deflections, rebounds, things of that nature. This could be a player who could certainly fit in that parameter. And I will say this. I will give Lou Lamoriello credit for this signing. Not necessarily because I think that it is the answer to the Islanders' lack of offense right now, but because he's thinking a little bit outside the box. Here, you didn't give up anything but whatever the contract is worth to sign him. It's a one-year deal. You're not locking him up, but at the same time, you're not committing to him long-term. So if it doesn't work out, you certainly have a situation where you can walk away. You didn't have to give up any draft picks. You didn't have to give up any players off the current roster. And, other than the lack of speed, the physicality and the willingness to go into the dirty areas would probably set him up for a role in Patrick Waugh's system. In addition, obviously, the fact that the Islanders already have 3 Russian players on their active roster in Ilya Sorokin, Semyon Varlamov, and Alexander Romanov, not to mention Ruslan Ishkakov, who is he is a free agent right now, a restricted free agent, but if he does re-sign with the Islanders, he would either he has a shot at being on the big club next year or being down at Bridgeport. I don't think the Islanders acquired Tsyplakov in order to put him back in Bridgeport, although that always remains a possibility. But to me, looking at this situation, this is a low risk, potentially high reward kind of a situation. If it doesn't work out, you could put him in the minors. He could even just say, I'm not going to the AHL. I'll go back to the KHL and walk away from his contract. And the Islanders might even agree to that, or you could try to trade his rights because there are other teams who liked him. You can add goal scoring without A, breaking the bank because it is an entry-level contract, and B, without giving up assets. Now, Do I expect him to score 31 goals in the NHL? No, I don't. But if he can give you 20 or 22 or 25 to add a bona fide goal scorer, even if it is in the second best league, at least if you ask most hockey experts in the world, rather than in the NHL, I think it's a solid pickup and worth the try. We have all always said that in order to add, based on all the restrictions that the Islanders have with the salary cap and with the no trade clauses and with the way that so many of these contracts are structured that makes these players hard to trade, even if they're willing to go somewhere, and the lack of prospects, you have to think outside the box in order to improve this team. This is thinking a little bit outside the box, and let's hope that this was a good addition for the Islanders. And we'll see, how he looks in training camp and preseason and hopefully the regular season later on this fall. So the Islanders add a goal scorer from the KHL in Maxim Tsyplakov, and hopefully he is a good fit for the Islanders and someone who will help this team this year and maybe even beyond. We've got a lot more to get to on today's show. We'll continue our season, our player-by-player review of the season, talk a little bit about Ilya Sorokin, plus we'll discuss a big obstacle to the Islanders improving this team and get a little more specific. Plus, for our Islanders birthday of the day, a player who spent parts of 2 seasons with the Islanders in the early 2000 teens. Let's see if you can guess who this defenseman is. We've got all that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee. So Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. My favorite feature on Game Time is the view from your seat. You go on the app, and before you make your purchase, before you even buy the tickets, you could see the view from your seat so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders from a season ago. We'll talk about the season that was, what their role was, and then project a little bit about their future, if any, with the team and what their role will be next season. And to, everydayers, that we did Kyle Palmieri a couple of days ago. Yesterday, we've done Matt Martin, Oliver Wahlstrom, Mike Riley. Today, we turn our attention to the goalie, Ilya Sorokin. And this was a tough season for Ilya Sorokin. His final numbers clearly not living up to what we expected from him. He had a .301 goals against average and a .908 save percentage, 25 wins, 19 losses, 12 overtime or shootout losses. That 12 overtime and shootout losses actually led the NHL. The concern is the numbers compared to a year ago. His save percentage went down from 924 to 908. The goals against went up from 2.34 to 3.01. The win total went down from 31 to 25. The overtime losses went up by 5. The regulation losses did go down by 3. But overall, it wasn't just the numbers that were a concern for Ilya Sorokin. It was that he just seemed to lack a certain amount of confidence and a certain amount of fundamentals that we have seen in the past from him. And, that includes the way he played his angles, how far he came out from the goal at times. He seemed to all of a sudden be vulnerable low glove side, kind of under the armpit area on his glove side. That was never apparently a big weakness before. I don't necessarily blame Ilya Sorokin alone for all of these issues. The Islanders' defense in front of him, especially in the first half of the year to 2/3 of the year, was not as good. You had an injury to Semyon Varlamov that and no depth in the organization as far as a third goalie the team felt comfortable bringing up and starting. So you had a situation where, 14 straight starts for Sorokin in the middle of the season. He faced more shots per game than any other starting goalie, with the exception of the Sharks, who were the worst team in the league. And a lot of those were quality, high danger chances as well. So, yeah, Ilya Sorokin was not on top of his game this year. But at the same time, the Islanders around him, they didn't give him enough support. So you're now looking at a situation where this coming season, his salary is going to jump from $4 million a year, which is what it was this season, to $8.25 million a year. And that is the first of a lengthy, 8-year contract at $8.25 million a year. The Islanders are counting on Ilya Sorokin to be their number one goalie, their franchise goalie for the next, foreseeable future. And certainly, when you have an 8-year deal, this is the guy you're counting on. And remember, just a year ago, Ilya Sorokin was the runner-up in the voting for the Vezina Trophy. He wasn't anywhere near that level this year, but I am confident that with a little mental and physical rest and a little work with his goalie coach, he can bounce back and have another outstanding year in 2024, 2025. I expect Sorokin to be the Islanders' number one goalie again. Ideally, I want him closer to 50 starts than 55 or 60, which is what he had in each of the last 2 seasons, 55 and 60. I would like it to be between, let's say, 50 and 52 starts for Sorokin, and hopefully a full year of Patrick Roy's system, integrating that system from the start of training camp. All of that will allow, and maybe a healthy defensive core will allow Ilya Sorokin to not face so much rubber, get his confidence back. The coaching can get him back on track. And we're looking at a bounce back season. And look, in his previous 3 years with the Islanders, the save percentages were .918, .925, .924. Even get me back to that .918 level. The goals against averages, .217, .240, .234. Get me under 2.5. Shutouts, 3, 7, and 6. This year, only 2. Get me back to 4 or 5 at least. I think these are not outrageous aspirations for Ilya Sorokin going forward. I believe that this was, look, sometimes guys have a down year. I am not at all panicked about the future of Ilya Sorokin with the New York Islanders. The only caveat I have is this: he better be able to get back to being one of the better goalies in the NHL. He's going to be paid like an elite goalie. He's got to play like it because, look, Lou Lamoriello, as we all know, if you look at his history, he likes to build from the goal out. His biggest success with the Devils came because he had a Hall of Fame goalie in Martin Brodeur who erased mistakes by his team and was able to, come through in big situations. The Islanders need Sorokin. He doesn't have to be as good as Martin Brodeur, but he does need to be as good as he's been already, with the exception of this year. It's important that he do that. One of the ways the Islanders can improve as a team is to get Sorokin back to the player he was, not this year, but a year ago. And if they can do that, they can win more hockey games, even if the 18 skaters on the ice are just tighten up the defense just a little bit. You can win more games that way. Now, you're going to need more than just that to become a contending team, but getting Sorokin back to an elite level, which I still think is realistic, would go a long way toward helping the Islanders improve next season. We have got more to get to on today's show. We're going to talk about the specifics of another obstacle that makes it harder for the Islanders to really improve their team this offseason. We'll talk about that, plus our Islanders birthday of the day, all that coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So every day, as you know, we've talked about some of the obstacles that the Islanders face if they want to become, if they want to improve their team. And, I've mentioned some of the problems, not a lot of cap space, aging roster, no significant, blue chip prospects right now who are close to being NHL ready, prospect pool ranked by many to be the worst in the NHL. And then there's the contracts. Number one, a lot of these guys are overpaid as compared to their age and production. And B, Lou Lamoriello has given out a lot of modified no-trade clauses and no-trade clauses, and that has really handcuffed his ability to make moves. And, you can't blame anybody but the guy who handed these contracts out. So the only person that Lou Lamoriello can really blame for this is Lou Lamoriello. But I wanted to get into the specifics right now and go over player by player who has a no-trade clause, a modified no-trade clause, etc. Let's start with the top line. Bo Horvat has a full no-trade clause between now and 2027, 2028, when it moves to a modified no-trade clause where he will have to submit to the Islanders a list of 16 teams he cannot be traded to. But even that is still 3 more years away. So for the next 3 years, Bo Horvat would have to approve a trade to any other team. Matthew Barzal has a modified no-trade clause. It's 22 teams. So that leaves, 9 teams that he could be traded to? Not that the Islanders are necessarily going to trade Barzy anytime soon, but there's only 9 teams possible that could happen. Anders Lee still has a modified no-trade clause. 15 teams that he can list that he won't get traded to. That limits it to 16 teams the Islanders could trade him to. Brock Nelson, a 16-team no-trade list for him. He also has a modified no-trade clause. Same for J.G. Pageau. So you're basically saying with Lee, Nelson, and Pageau, half the teams in the league, you cannot trade them to. Add Kyle Palmieri to that list, same situation. Now, again, players can waive modified no-trade clauses or no-trade clauses, but that is the situation that they're in. Ditto for Pierre Engvall. Now, his 7-year contract, 6 years left on it, probably makes it unlikely that any team would want him, even though his cap hit is only $3 million a year. But he has a modified 16-team no-trade clause as of right now. On the blue line, Adam Pelech, Ryan Pollock each have full no-trade clauses. They cannot be traded at all without their consent. In the case of Pelech, it goes to a 16-team list in 2025, 2026. And in Pollock's situation, it becomes a 16-team no-trade clause in 2027, 2028. Scott Mayfield also a full no-trade clause that becomes a 16-team list that he'll submit in 2027, 2028. Oh, Ilya Sorokin, as of July 1st, full no movement clause, becomes a 16-team list in 2028, 2029. So if the Islanders want to trade Ilya Sorokin, and I doubt they do, they have until July 1st when his new deal kicks in. And Semyon Varlamov, full no trade clause for this season, becomes a 16-team no trade clause in 2025, 2026. Those players are difficult to impossible to move at this point because of the way Lou Lamoriello structured their contracts and included no trade clauses or modified no trade clauses in their deals. Now, that doesn't make it impossible to improve this team, but it sure as heck puts a lot of obstacles in your way, especially if you want to move on from some of these players who are getting paid more than their production and just are past their prime or not the players they were for injury reasons or other reasons. It makes it a lot harder, let's put it that way. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and Saturday will be the 34th birthday of former Islanders defenseman Aaron Ness, the Russo, Minnesota native, drafted by the Islanders in the second round back in 2008, spent 3 years at the University of Minnesota before signing with the Islanders in 2010, 2011, played with Bridgeport for most of that season and the next, but did make his NHL debut in 2011, 2012, playing 9 games for the Islanders, played 20 more games for the Isles in 2013, 2014, and then ended up in Bridgeport, played for the Capitals, the Hershey Bears, who were the Capitals farm club at that point, the Tucson Roadrunners, 25 total games over 2 seasons for the Arizona Coyotes, and then he's still active as of this year. Played with the Providence Bruins, and then for the last 2 seasons with the Hershey Bears. Now he represented the United States in the 2022 Olympics, had an assist in 4 games there. But in his career so far, 72 NHL games, 1 goal, 7 points, 22 penalty minutes. He has yet to appear in a playoff game in the NHL. one of his better games as an Islander and certainly one of his most memorable. How about November 14th, 2013? Islanders hosting the LA Kings at the Nassau Coliseum. The goalies, well, Ben Scrivens for the Kings, Kevin Poulin, the goalie for the Islanders. And with the Islanders already up 1-0 early in the second period, Aaron Ness, our Islanders' birthday of the day, scores his first career NHL goal. John Tavares assists. That put the Islanders ahead 2-0. Unfortunately, they couldn't hold the lead, and they ended up losing in regulation 3-2. Tyler Toffoli got the game winner with 1:27 left in the third period. But for Aaron Ness, he had a goal. He was a +1. He had 2 shots on goal and played a little under 13 minutes in that game. And to date, that remains his only career NHL goal. So happy birthday to Aaron Ness. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers will be back Monday as we continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders season. And we're going to talk a little bit about Alexander Romanov on Monday. So make sure you join us for that. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.